Welcome back to our GourmIDE series. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last video after we connected to a database, a MySQL database, and we used PHP code to do that, and we verified it in a PHP web page. What we're going to do now is display the information from the database. It's a very small database, but we're going to show you how to do that. And I'm also going to use W3 Schools, and I'm going to go down to where it has select. So I'm going to look for select data down there, and I'm just going to use their code. For MySQLi, I'm not going to use object-oriented. I'm going to use procedural. So I'm going to use this, and I'll just copy the whole thing again, even though I still have to update a couple things. So I'm going to copy all this code, and I'll go through a little bit of it. And like I said, I'm not a PHP expert, so I can show you some things, but I haven't studied PHP for years, but I get it to work, so that's the important thing. And I'll go here, and I'll just paste it all over what we just did. Now I have to change these, because this has to go back to PHP myadmin, and this has to go back to root. And our database is called MyCDs. And if you're not sure, double check. So I'll go here and it's called MyCDs with an underscore. So that's the right database. And here we have database name. I don't have to change that because it's already pointing to the variable. So again, these are the variables that represent this. This is the connection. And then this is the same kind of if that we had on the other one. So if it doesn't connect, it shows an error. If it connects, it's actually going to start displaying rows from our table. But before that, we actually have some SQL right here. It's in a string. We have some SQL, and we're going to have to change that. Actually, we don't want to show the ID, so I'm going to get rid of ID here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our database, and we're going to show the artist, title, and date. How about just that? We'll just do artist, title, and date. We don't need to know if it's studio or compilation or live right now. Just artist, title, and date. We'll do that. We'll go back here, and we're just going to say select artist. Now these are the columns from our database, and I'll put title, and then I'll put a comma, and I'll put date. And it's not from my guests, and it's also not from my CDs. It's actually, this is the table name. So in an SQL query, we're already connected to our database. This is our table that we're pulling these from. So our table is called CDs, and if you're not sure, go back here, and there's the table, CDs. And if you go to structure, you can see that as well. So our table is CDs. So now we're pulling stuff from the right place. We have the right column names up here. This is our SQL, in quotes, our SQL code. And W3 Schools has a nice section on SQL as well, so I'll use some of that as well. Now, this thing here, there's an if-else statement, and it has a while loop in here, so there's a bunch of things going on. But basically what it means is while you're getting information from your rows of your table, as long as they're greater than 0, it's going to display them, and it's going to display them in this kind of variable called result. So your result is going to be what comes out. So as long as you're getting a result, it's going to display them, and then it's going to echo out what the results are and how you want them. So this one has a mix of things. This is from the sample in W3 Schools. What I'm going to do here is actually just kind of get rid of some of this stuff, and I'm going to put them on different lines. And I think this will be easier to kind of see it. And just keep in mind, when you see these dots, these are concatenation dots, just like sometimes you might use a plus sign, sometimes in Java or Python or JavaScript. In PHP, they use dots, and that's basically when you're concatenating or combining strings and variables. These row things are variables, and they have brackets. It's almost like an array, because it's saying from the row it's this column, from the row it's that column, from the row it's this column. So these are columns, and we're not going to do ID, so I'm just going to change these columns in here. Now notice they are in quotes, and they have to be exactly the way they are. So it's going to be artist, and I'm going to get rid of this, but I'm going to keep the dot, and maybe I'll just put that on a separate line. So it's going to be artist, and then it's going to be title, and I'll get rid of this because I'm not putting, well, actually, we should put a space in here. So if it has artist, I should put a dot. I like to put space dot, and then we'll put a space. So there's our space, and then there's a dot again. And then I'll go down here and do the same thing. So it's basically saying, okay, row artist, then there's a space, and then it's saying row title, and then there's a space. You could put these into tables and make them rows and make them look real nice. This won't look real nice for now, but it'll work. So that's all we're trying to do is get it to work. So we have artist, title, and then this one's going to be date. And notice at the end, there's going to be a line break. And even to make it look nicer, I'll make sure I put I like to do space dot whatever is next. So let's just make sure we have all these. Echo, it starts with row, then there's a dot, then there's a space, and then it's row title, and then there's a dot and a space, and then it's date. So what it should do is after it displays one row, it's going to make a line break at the end and then go through, and if there's still results, it's going to do it again, and it's going to display all the rows in our table. Now we don't have a very big table, so this should be easy. And if you don't have any, it'll say 0 results. So if it doesn't find anything, it'll say 0 results, and then it'll close it at the end. So let's see how this works so far. I think I have everything okay. We just updated them, and if there's an error, that's fine. We'll figure it out. But let's save it. Make sure it has the X. And what I'll do is I'll go back here, and it does say CD, so that means it's going to default to index.php, and I'm just going to refresh it. And there's our elements from our database. There's our records. And this is the artist, this is the title, and this is the date. Now we could put these into table, rows, and columns. We could put headings, all those kind of things. We'll do that in a later video. But just for now, I wanted to make sure that we can do this and show how easy it is to do it through GourmIDE. And we're doing this all in the cloud. So if you're in a Chromebook or anything, you could do all this. That's what's really cool about this. You don't need amps or WAMP or any of that to do that. And eventually we'll do a WordPress install as well. But for now, I'm just going to go back. So this is working, and I have it saved. So that's all we need to do right now. So I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to close this up, and I'll close up my W3 Schools. I'll log out of my PHP MyAdmin, and I'll close up that page. Then I'll go down here. And once we close the container, that page won't work anymore, but I'll just close this up just so it looks nice and neat. And I'll close my container. And it says, are you sure you want to close the container? I'll put yes. And now when you go back here and you refresh it, it probably won't show. And it's saying invalid address because now we no longer have our web server running. So that's okay. I'm going to close this up. And we're back to our container, which is no longer running, and that was it. That was our first shot at not only connecting to a database, to a MySQL database with PHP code, but also displaying the information on a page.